Welcome to Our Weird World. I'm your host, John Henson, and this week, wrapping up Serial Killer September with the story of Robert Berdella. Now, if you have paid attention, that you know that like when I do these theme months, like I tend to try to build it up so where like it's the worst story for the month at the end. So, you know, look, Robert Berdella, I kind of mentioned this last week, not the most prolific serial killer by any means, but what he did, he got his money's worth on his. And so got a lot of really gruesome details, and we are going to cover them right now. It's story time. Robert Berdella was born on January 31st, 1949 in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, to a very religious family who really loved sports. You know, like his father especially like wanted that kid who was like the star quarterback and also the star on the basketball team and then also the star on the baseball team, like just did everything. And Robert was a small gay child with high blood pressure. So he did not. He was not a big fan of sports. And in response, Robert's father kind of focused most of his love and attention to Robert's younger brother, Daniel. And also just kind of as 1950s and 1960s Midwestern fathers tend to do, also enjoyed just beating them both with a leather strap for disciplinary reasons. By the time he was a teenager, Robert began coming out of his otherwise reserved shell by acting very rude and condescending towards women, which I like. Gay dudes are sassy, but not like in a negative way, at least towards women. I don't know. He was very militant towards women. He also became really passionate about art and cooking. Now, in 1965, Robert saw the film adaptation of The Collector, which was it was originally a book about like this guy who essentially was a collector, and it kind of grew into where he wanted to collect a person and make them their slave, sex slave, basically. Anyway, and honestly, like that book has actually like influenced multiple serial killers throughout history. Leonard Lake being another one. I think there was at least one more that just really weird how it influenced the real life. But Robert, you know, kind of didn't take it that way initially. He became really fascinated with literally just collecting things, and he actually developed some pen pals in Vietnam and Burma, Myanmar now, who would send him various stamps depicting artifacts of their culture. So he starts collecting stamps like a traditional dork would. But other than that, like he was cool. Like he was really happy. He found his purpose. Like he found something that could interest him. And then things started to go downhill. Robert's father died on Christmas Day, 1965, which like of all days in a year, got to be like one of the worst ones. Like maybe like Christmas and your birthday, like 1A, 1B, worst days for someone really close to you to die. Because like those days are just ruined forever for you at that point, right? In response, Robert tried to return to his religious roots before ultimately kind of becoming disenchanted with religion altogether. It just wasn't giving him the comfort and the answers that he needed. Even worse, when his mother married a few months later, Robert became completely antisocial and focused on just collecting as many strange artifacts as he could find. After graduating high school, Robert moved down to Kansas City to attend the Kansas City Art Institute, where he quickly got into drugs and became extremely anti-authoritarian. He also developed an interest in torturing animals and developed 3 separate quote-unquote art exhibitions where he would torture ducks and chickens, and he even tranquilized a dog. But it's art, you guys. And like, here's the thing. That's one of the things, and I am an artistic person. I'm an autistic person as well. See what I did there? No, but like I hate that the cop out is like anything can be art, like just admiring the craftsmanship of something. Oh, it's art. And I get it, because like when I cook, I'm creating something, and I really put some effort into it. Or when I'm writing my books, or when I'm doing this podcast, it is a form of art. But for some reason, I hate this cop out that you can just splatter paint against a blank canvas and just call it art. Just random splatters of paint wherever they may fall. Oh, it's art. Like that, and what Bob Ross was doing is not the same thing. And as someone who is a quote unquote artist in some sort of form, I even hate that. Berdella, however, he is taking it way farther than this. He's just setting up an exhibit, and he's just torturing chickens. And he's like, it's art, you guys. Look at this art. Look at this chicken's suffering. It depicts, it really encapsulates the suffering that we feel right now here because of Vietnam or whatever. Like, we are the chickens here. And I am playing the role of the U.S. government, and the government is torturing us, man. Art, right? It's all art. Anyway, a few months later, after doing some of these exhibits, Robert was arrested for selling meth to an undercover officer and was given a 5-year suspended sentence. A month later, he was arrested again for possession of marijuana and LSD. And although he spent 5 days in jail, the charges were later dropped due to a lack of evidence, which, I don't know, that's weird. But so like, yeah, he is super into drugs and also super into just like really fringe art. And like we all know of like someone like that who is just like, oh God, man, like I can't with you and your weird energy right now. Because like it's the kind of guy who just like is a contrarian just to be different. And who like always has to say something whenever they disagree with something. Just like, shut up, Dave. Like we get it. No one likes you. Anyway, I don't know where I'm going with that. After killing and cooking a duck in the name of art, dude sets up another art exhibit and just goes through the entire process of butchering and preparing a duck. It's art. Robert dropped out of the Art Institute, probably a good choice there, and began spending his time with gay prostitutes, drug addicts, and criminals. But here's the thing. Rather than like participate in those activities, Robert kind of started to become like a foster parent to these people, hoping that he could rehabilitate them towards a better life. And so by the early 1980s, Robert had established a reputation as just this arrogantly flamboyant gay man who was just really passionate about his local crime-ridden, terrible neighborhood. He assisted the police in crime prevention. He became the chairman of the neighborhood association, and he organized various fundraising events. So, like, on one hand, doing a lot of good work. On the other hand, really, really insufferable. So, like, he's just, and it should not surprise. Like he works at a chef, and because art, and like he had become a well-respected cook at some of Kansas City's most prestigious restaurants. He even went so far as to start a training program for aspiring chefs. So like, dude's doing a lot of good work. He's a pain to deal with. Because, like, it's just that over-the-top personality that no one likes and just thinks that, like, I'm special. Here I am, saving all of the derelicts and degenerates from my neighborhood. Here we go. This is my character, gonna sing in a little gay voice because I'm Robert Berdella. Anyway, yeah, like, whatever. I don't know where that came from, but it's coming back for sure. Robert, to supplement his income, I guess because being a cook wasn't paying the bills, Robert also began selling various art and antique items that he had collected from the contacts that he had made in Africa, Asia, South America, and several Pacific countries. So, like, you know, he was still collecting this entire time. Like, this very, very deep and complex man Robert Berdella is. Like, unlike most serial killers who are pretty straightforward, it's just like, oh, I need to choke this lady in order to experience an orgasm. That's pretty basic. Robert, however, very deep, you know, because he collects things, but he's also very, very gay, and also very, very, very into drugs, and also very, very, very into art. And he also cooks well, apparently. I don't know, just a lot going on. In 1982, he left the restaurant industry and opened Bob's Bizarre Bazaar at the Westport Flea Market. Now, here's just a thing that bothers me about how Bob Berdella named this store. I love the play on words, all right? Bizarre, meaning strange, weird, unexpected. Bazaar, meaning an open market of sorts. One is spelled Bazaar, the other one Bizarre. The Biz is the weird. It's the out there, it's the strange. So when you are describing, if you are going to say a bizarre bazaar, the Bizarre, I know that no one cares about this. This is something that really bothers me. The Bizarre, the adjective describing the weird market should be the first bazaar rather than the second. But no, Bob's Bazaar. Essentially, if you translated it as it would be Bob's Market Weird, not Weird Market. And it just bothers me so much that that's how he chose to do it. And I hated him. That, like, up until that point, he's like, oh, this is a very interesting person. Now I hate him. Like, mildly annoyed by him at first. Super hate this guy now because of how he named his store. I get that that's a very shallow reason for me to hate him, but these are the kinds of things that bother me. Of course, you know, and I think because it was very confusing how he styled this, he rarely made enough in sales to make ends meet. And so he was often forced to steal or scavenge for additional items to sell in the store. And so during his time at the flea market, and really it wasn't a store, like it was a booth inside of a flea market. But anyway, who cares? But during his time at the flea market, Robert became close friends with a guy named Paul Howell, who operated the booth next to his Bizarre Bazaar. He also got close to Paul's son, Jerry, even though he and his friends openly mocked how overtly gay Robert was, which is weird, you know, because you got this kid and his friends coming around where it's just like, ha, you're gay. But then, like, I don't know, behind closed doors or whatever, like Jerry's like, hey man, you're pretty cool. I don't know. Additionally, Jerry eventually allegedly confided in Robert that he and his friends worked as male prostitutes to make extra money. And so, you know, like, is that true? I don't know. Was it, but like, it's also like we saw last week, like it wasn't completely out of the ordinary, still isn't out of the ordinary for closeted gay people to be like extra mean to real gay people only because they're actually gay themselves. It's weird. But on July 5th, 1984, Robert invited Jerry to a dance contest in the Kansas City suburb of Merriam, Kansas. But once Jerry was in the car, Robert started giving him alcohol, Valium, and other drugs to really try to quickly knock him out. And to make sure that Jerry was out cold, Robert injected him with a tranquilizer before tying him up in his bed. And this is where it just goes off the wall. All right. For the next 28 hours, so more than a day, Robert drugged, tortured, and raped Jerry with various foreign objects. And dude has a house full of strange artifacts and, you know, figurines and such from all over the world. So you just let your mind wander on that one. Unfortunately, Jerry choked to death on his own vomit. And so when that happened, Robert took his body down to his basement where he suspended it over a large pot, and made several incisions along Jerry's major arteries to drain the blood. The next day, Robert then went into the basement and used a chainsaw to dismember the body before putting the pieces in trash bags and letting the garbage crew haul it off to a landfill. Which look, if you're going to do it, if you're going to be lazy about hiding a body, that's the way to do it. You time it. It's a timing thing for sure. You gotta kill the person and dismember it so it's still relatively fresh. It's not stinky. Throw it in your dumpster the day or hours before the garbage people come to haul off your garbage. That's how you do it, because then it becomes a lot harder to trace it back to you, because now you got a truck full of a bunch of different garbages. Now, maybe I guess now that I think about it, and this is the 1980s, so of course this wasn't going to happen, but you could figure out maybe if you catch it in time, the route that the dump truck was on where they could have picked. So then you kind of narrow it down. Anyway, I don't know why I'm going down that rabbit hole. A year later, on April 10th, 23-year-old Robert Sheldon knocked on Robert's door asking if he could stay for a few days. And that's because Sheldon had stayed with Berdella in the past as one of his quote-unquote foster children. Berdella recognized him and was like, "Yeah, buddy, come on in." But this time, Berdella kind of viewed Sheldon as an inconvenience, didn't really want him around, and so after 2 days, he decided that was going to be his next victim to drug and torture. And so over the next 3 days, Robert held Sheldon captive and tortured him by swabbing drain cleaner on his eyes, which, I know that that's not anybody's normal routine, but drain cleaner, among all of the other cleaners out there, very dangerous and very, not smart to rub directly into your eyeballs. But whatever. So he was doing that. He also inserted needles beneath his fingernails, which, ow. And he also filled his ears with caulk, not his wiener, but the stuff that you squeeze out of the tube to fill in cracks. That. I don't know why I felt like I had to differentiate that. When a repairman knocked on the door to work on the roof of the home, Robert panicked and kind of suffocated Sheldon by placing a sack over his head and tightening it with rope. And then he just goes and lets this repairman in, lets him do his work. And then after the repairman leaves, Robert dissected Sheldon's body in the bathroom. After torturing and murdering another person, Robert then had a chance encounter with another former quote-unquote foster child, James Ferris. Following a few drinks, Robert brought Ferris home and tranquilized him before tying him to the bed. And again, same thing. Over the next 27 hours, Robert, it's funny, it's cool. Cool is not the right word, but it's the same process of, oh, hey, all right, I'm going to drug and torture you and tie you up. And then after that, the different torture methods were all different. And so it's just interesting to see that we have all of these details so that I can make everyone uncomfortable. And again, remind you, hey, life isn't that bad right now. Robert, over the next 27 hours, Robert shocked Ferris with nearly 8,000 volts to his shoulders and testicles for up to 5 minutes each. And that's a long time. Normally people are only going to run the electrocutor for 10, 15 seconds. Dude was going for 5 minutes at a time. And not surprisingly, this killed Ferris for sure. The following year, Robert then reconnected with a guy named Todd Stoops, who was a former drug addict that Robert had been extremely attached to, kind of romantically. Robert invited Stoops back to his home where he really got to live out this fantasy that he had started to develop from The Collector, which, like I mentioned earlier, which was the end goal of that was to have a completely cooperative sex slave. kind of, it's kind of along the same vein of what Jeffrey Dahmer tried to do. I don't think Dahmer ever read or watched The Collector, but Dahmer tried to like inject stuff into people's brains to make them a mindless zombie that he could just have sex with all the time, but it didn't really work out. Well, this is what Berdella is trying to do. So for the next 2 weeks, Robert shocked Stoops' closed eyes to blind him. And let me be clear on what I mean by that. So you know how he was rubbing drain cleaner into a dude's eyes before? So now he's taking basically live electrical wire, I guess, or whatever he was using before. And he's just shocking people's bare eyeballs with that to make them go blind. Crazy. And then he's injecting drain cleaner directly into Stoops' larynx to prevent him from screaming. That's dark. That's really dark. 10 days into the captivity, and this is gross. Robert, I can't believe these words are about to come out of my mouth. Robert ruptured Stoops' anal wall with his fist because that's a thing that you can do, apparently. I didn't know that. And now you do, because why? And here's the thing. Stoops lived for another 4 days before dying from septic shock, which is what happens when your intestinal wall gets ruptured and your poops get all into your bloodstream and stuff. I forgot how awful this story was. In the spring of 1987, Robert then met 20-year-old Larry Wayne Pearson, who was interested in the antiques that Robert was selling at his bazaar in the flea market. As the two got to know each other, they got closer. Pearson actually ended up moving into Robert's house and performed various chores as a way to pay rent. Although Robert originally had no intention of killing Pearson, his mind changed after Pearson told Robert about all the times he used to rob gay men back in his hometown in Wichita, Kansas, which now we're going to be like little Robin Hood of gay serial killers. You can just murder and torture people to death, but God forbid someone robs gay men for sport, because then you have to avenge death, or whatever. So from there, Robert tranquilized Pearson, tied him up in the basement, and injected drain cleaner into his larynx. He's getting the process down. Robert then shocked Pearson with a transformer and broke several bones in his hand with an iron rod, which, like, that's turning into like some Misery type stuff where you're just taking iron rods and just breaking hands, just like, oh God. However, and here's the thing, Pearson, I don't know if it was a defense mechanism or just how he was naturally, but Pearson seemed so much more submissive than Berdella's previous victims. It was just like, whereas everyone else was fighting and, fighting back and refusing to play along, Pearson was just like, yeah, man. Yeah, that's fine. You go ahead and break my hands. That's fine. Go ahead. I need another injection of drain cleaner. Daddy, come on. Do it. And and so Berdella, like, it's hard to get a boner. I'm guessing it's hard to get a boner when dudes are cooperating with the torture, because the struggle, that's what really gets the blood pumping. But Pearson was just like, yeah, come on, keep going. I like it. So Robert, instead of killing him, Robert decided to reward Pearson by moving him upstairs and just torturing him some more. Eventually, Pearson just couldn't take any more of the torture, and after 6 weeks of captivity, Pearson, during a torture session, just chomped down on Berdella's wiener as hard as he could, because of course there was a lot of sex stuff going on. I think it's easy for that to get lost in all of this, but yeah, like, Berdella's still raping all of these people as he's torturing them. So obviously when you bite down on a wiener really hard, that's going to anger the owner of said wiener. And in response, Robert bludgeoned Pearson to death with a tree limb. Oh, sure. Okay. On March 29th, 1988, Robert abducted 22-year-old male prostitute Christopher Bryson. This time, Robert didn't even try to play nice, as he had done with other victims. He just immediately knocked this guy unconscious with an iron rod and tied him to the bed, where he then swabbed his eyes with ammonia. So we've moved on from like live wires and drain cleaner. We're now doing straight ammonia. After 3 days, though, Bryson, again, he's kind of into it. You know, he's just like, all right, you know, this is a little non-traditional, but I'm here for it. Let's keep going, bud. And so Bryson earned enough of Berdella's trust by being this obedient little sex slave that Robert, for a brief moment, let his guard down. And while Robert was off at work, Bryson broke out of his weekend restraints and jumped from the second-story window wearing nothing but a dog collar. So you're here in this like suburb of Kansas City, and it's a quiet day. It's a nice spring day, right? It's a little cool outside. You know, flowers are blooming. And then all of a sudden, you just see this naked kid. I say kid, he's 22. Running through your neighborhood frantically. Probably got a lot of bruises and cuts on him, but he's butt naked. Nothing but a dog collar on. How's that going to, like, that's going to stay with you for the rest of your life. And, like, here's the thing. I don't want to draw attention away from the victims, because they're clearly the ones that need the most sympathy in the story. But I think what gets lost in a lot of these stories is just, how does that screw with the people around where this took place, you know? And so, like, and also, dude breaks his foot in the fall, but he was able to run over to a meter reader across the street. Like, dude's just there doing his job, just like, yep, another Tuesday. Why are you naked in front of me? Oh, you've been tortured for the last 3 days? Holy crap, let's call the police. Like, I don't know, just things that you just don't ever expect to happen. Bryson then quickly told police all about the torture that he'd endured. And he was taken to the nearest hospital, while other officers stayed behind to maintain surveillance on the house. Obviously, Robert was arrested a few hours later when he got home. And when investigators searched the house, they found an electrical transformer that he had been using to shock people, several syringes and small bottles of drugs, a long iron pipe that he was beating people with, several pieces of rope, several leather belts. They found a human skull in the closet, another decomposed head in the backyard. Elsewhere in the house, investigators found several vertebrae stuffed in the hallway walls and teeth that were collected or that were kept in two different envelopes. They found a hacksaw and a miter saw. I think it's a miter saw, something like that. Stained with blood, flesh, and pubic hair in the basement. Ugh. And then finally, they found over 300 Polaroid pictures depicting several men, both dead and alive, in various stages of torture, along with a detailed journal recounting everything that Berdella had done. So, like, again, it's all there. It's obvious. He's done this. And so, with more evidence than they really needed, police handed down several charges on Berdella. And in order to avoid the death penalty, Robert agreed to confess to everything and give excruciatingly graphic details about each murder he had committed, which is why we know all of this and why I've told it all to you. As part of the deal, he received life sentences for each of the 6 murders that he had committed, along with several additional years for forced sodomy charges. Yeah, just because. In 1992, Robert filed a complaint alleging that the staff of the Missouri State Penitentiary was withholding his heart medications, which, good for them. On October 8th of that year, an ambulance was called to the prison after Robert complained of chest pains, and he died 2 hours later of a heart attack at age 43. And that is the end of our story. Yeah. So again, this isn't maybe not David Parker Ray level of awful, or like however we ended the other one. I don't remember, honestly. I could look back. It's not important. Either way, like not the most graphic, but probably top 10 for sure of just like most awful stories we've ever had on here. So with that, let's end Serial Killer September and recap what we learned today.
What did we learn?
Number one, Robert Berdella, very flamboyant, aggressive gay man in Kansas City, who apparently liked to create art exhibitions where he would torture chickens and ducks because, art. Number two, he was heavily influenced by the book and the movie called The Collector, where the character of the story decides he needs a super obedient, submissive sex slave and gets it in the story. And Robert tried to recreate that and didn't quite get there. And number three, he killed 6 people, could have 100% killed way more than that, because no one had any remote idea that he was doing this, and just he got lazy real early on and was too trusting of his victims, and that was his ultimate downfall. Next week on Our Weird World, we are into October, which means it's Halloween themed and all kinds of spooky paranormal topics. Really just 3 different topics. We're going to have a couple of multi-part series because there's just going to be a ton of them. I'm not going to say 2 parts. Mostly because we did one of these previously, but we're going to have 2 more episodes dedicated to some cryptids and monsters throughout history. Next week specifically, we're going to talk about the Jersey Devil, the Beast of Gavaldon, the Beast of Busco, and the Riverside Bridge Monster. But we're also going to be talking about aliens, both like sightings and supposed abductions. And we're also going to talk about some famous haunted houses. So going to be a fun time in October, talking about some spooky stuff. But other than that, that's going to do it for this week. Thank you all for continuing to listen. Keep telling all your friends about it because they might like it, because you never know. And then you have something to talk about other than just like whatever you normally talk about. Or you can like listen to the show together when you're taking road trips or something. I don't know. Whatever. But also, keep it weird. This might be like one of my favorite rap songs of all time. The same shiesty cats that you hang with and do your thing with could set you up and wet you up. Peep the language. It's universal. You play with fire, it may hurt you or burn you. Lessons are blessings you should learn through. Let's face facts. Although MCs lace tracks, it doesn't mean behind the scenes there ain't no dirt to trace back. That goes for all of us. There ain't nobody to trust. It's like sabotage. It's got me ready to bust. But I can't jeopardize what I have done up to this point. So I'ma get more guys to help me run the whole joint. Cultivate, multiply, motivate, or else we'll die. You know I be the master of the who, what, where, and why. See, when you're shining, some chumps'll wanna dull ya. Always selfish, jealous punks will wanna pull ya down. Just like some shellfish in a bucket, 'cause they love it to see you squirm like a worm. But just as you receive what is coming to you, everybody else is going to get theirs too. I ain't no saint. Therefore, I cannot dispute that everyone must meet their moment of truth. Sometimes you gotta dig deep when problems come near. Don't fear. Things get severe for everybody, everywhere. Why do bad things happen to good people? Seems that life is just a constant war between good and evil. The situation that I'm facing is mad amazing. To think such problems can arise from minor confrontations. Now I'm contemplating in my bedroom pacing. Dark clouds over my head, my heart's racing. Suicide? Nah, I'm not a foolish guy. Don't even feel like drinking or even getting high. 'Cause all that's gonna do, really, is accelerate the anxieties that I wish I could alleviate. But wait, I've been through a whole lot of other stuff before, so I ought to be able to withstand some more. But I'm sweating though. My eyes are turning red and I'm ready to lose my mind, but instead I use my mind. I put down the knife and take the bullets out my 9. My only crime was that I'm just too kind. And now some scandalous mother want to take what's mine, but they can't take the respect that I've earned in my lifetime. And you know they'll never stop the furious force of my rhymes. So like they say, every dog has its day. And like they say, God works in a mysterious way. So I pray, remembering the days of my youth as I prepare to meet my moment of truth.